Here comes the starting grid for race number 1. Stand by. Pole position, Marco Wittmann for BMW. Alongside is Mike Rockenfeller for Audi. Then on row 2, Paul di Resta and René Rast, Aston Martin and Audi. Then we see Robin Freins and Jake Dennis, P5 and P6. Sheldon van der Linde, P7. Timo Glock is P8. Then to the next row of the grid, we find Joel Eriksson and Nico Muller on that 5th row. To the 6th row now, where we find Daniel Juncadella, a race winner last year, and Loic Duval going alongside him. Jamie Green and Bruno Spengler occupy P13 and P14, ahead of Pietro Fittipaldi and Ferdinand Habsburg. Welcome to the DTM, gentlemen. Philip Eng and Jonathan Aberdeen bringing up the rear of the grid as we look at the very serious, contemplating what he can do, Marco Wittmann, who's going from pole position. Done all the hard work, of course, in quali, and has put the car P1. Two-time DTM champion knows what to do to win a DTM race. Challenging conditions, unquestionably. Marco Wittmann going from P1 on the grid. Mike Rockenfeller going from P2, Paul di Resta from P3. Conditions are not easing at all, I'm afraid to say. The rain intensity has perhaps reduced now as we see Dr. Andy Palmer from Aston Martin to the right-hand side of your picture. They're a welcome guest here at Hockenheim this weekend, and our Motorsport, of course, making their debut with the Aston Martin Vantage DTM car. We've so been looking forward to seeing that car, and I have to say they've not disappointed. 4.574 meters, then 35 laps. Lap record held by one Mr. Jamie Green back in 2017, a 132.456. We're not going to see that challenge today, regrettably, due to the conditions. Tomorrow might be a different story because it's going to be dry and we're hoping for a slightly warmer temperature. Quick facts then. Car weight lowered. Power, best power to weight ratio in history of DTM. Push to pass, another 30 horsepower available for 12 times a race. DRS and push to pass can be used together. And in the final 5 laps, DRS and push to pass can be used regardless of the gap, with the exception of the race leader, of course. And the start procedure, apologies for the spelling, a manual clutch pedal, no electronic or visual aids in the cockpit. Basically, what that means is that the drivers do not have launch control available to them as they had in the past. They could preload the car. And there you can see the car of Jonathan Aberdeen, which will be starting from the pit lane. The anticipation and the excitement and the tension is beginning to build. There are a lot of people here at Hockenheim to see the launch of the 2019 DTM season. The push to pass, the vehicle weight, the DRS, the new rear wing, and of course the 2-litre turbocharged engines for the first time ever. Of course, we've been known to have those extraordinary V8s, but now 620 brake horsepower, and every single driver that I have spoken to has said this new power plant is extraordinary. We love it. And 30 brake horsepower increase in terms of power available. They love it. And so too do we. The cars are released on their formation lap. I'm rubbing my hands with invisible soap. So excited am I for the start of this 2019 season. We're going to have 2 formation laps. The new race distance is going to be 35 laps. And Jonathan Aberdeen, of course, cannot be released until the last car has passed, which that has done now, so he'll be able to catch up with the rest of the cars on their formation lap, and you can see just how challenging the conditions are out of the pit lane as Jonathan Aberdeen gives it a footfall there. Has to pile on the opposite lock. Jonathan Aberdeen, former single-seater star. Seen him in the Formula 3 European Championship. One of the best single-seater championships I've had the privilege to voice, if I may say that. Sadly, no longer in the form that it once was. So a replay of the grid then, as you can see, running through on ticker on the screen for you. And this is what's going to be critical for some of those drivers that are not on the effective front row of the grid, Marco Wittmann and Mike Rockenfeller, and it's going to be visibility. That's going to be really challenging because all the spray is going to be kicked up from the cars ahead. So we continue our look through the grid. A reminder to you, 2 formation laps for the cars as they explore the grip that is available to them using the wet weather tyres from Hankook. Of course, sadly, we're not going to see the slicks in use today. And incidentally, Hankook having made absolutely no difference to the compounds of the tyres this year. So where last year, tyre management, you could see almost, and we did on a number of occasions, drivers, I was going to say almost taking a gamble, but it wasn't much of a gamble where they would come in almost on the first lap and get their mandatory pit stop out of the way and their tyre change out of the way. I don't think we're going to see that with the DTM this year. I think the rear tyre wear with the additional power that the cars have is really going to mean that degradation plays a part. If you look there, you'd think the rear view mirrors fell off the top of the windscreen and fell onto the dashboard of René Rast's car. It's another one of the changes in DTM. We do not have rear view mirrors. We have, indeed, cameras on the back of the car which project that image onto that small screen in the car for our DTM drivers. So they're on to their second of the formation laps, and from our vantage point here, you can really see the spray and how challenging the conditions are going to be for all these drivers. In fact, such is the conditions that they're now saying we're going to do 3 formation laps rather than 2. So that's just allowing the drivers to get accustomed to the conditions that we have. So inside the car there, we can see Marco Wittmann. You can see the firewall in the cockpit of the car now, which means additional safety for the driver of the DTM. That's that big black area to the back of Marco Wittmann, the pole sitter there. And hence the reason for the monitor rather than the rear view mirror, because if you had a rear view mirror now, all you'd see is the firewall. So that's why the cameras have been installed, and the screen there you can see in Pietro Fittipaldi's car, one of the 5 rookies here with DTM for this year, driving for the WRT team. We heard from Vincent Voss, the team principal, earlier on, and a big welcome to Pietro Fittipaldi then, who's just making an adjustment there to his brake bias, that little wheel you can see there that just changes the percentage of braking from front to rear. 34 laps is going to be the new race distance, which has been confirmed following the addition of another formation lap. Now that's what it looks like from the back of the car, so you can see all that spray being chucked up, and that's what people like Timo Glock have to drive into. Timo Glock, if I'm honest with you, out of position in qualifying. I felt that he had perhaps a little bit more available to him, but he couldn't seem to get it out of the car. Of course, you'll remember with great enthusiasm, as I'm sure I certainly did, the excellent battle he had with Gary Paffett and Mike Rockefeller at this very event last year, which set the scene and set the stall out, if you like, for what became a truly epic DTM season, which saw Gary Paffett crowned as champion here at Hockenheim at the end of the year. Big sideways moment there for Timo Glock, who never fails to entertain on track, getting the car back end really lit up. And on board with him, it's a great shot. You can see him down through the gears. So Dr. Andy Palmer there. And just behind Dr. Andy Palmer, of course, former chief of Mercedes-Benz Motorsport, there is Mr. Norbert Haug, who, another one that I had a conversation with last night, and he too very much looking forward to this DTM season. So as the cars come around the parabolica and head up towards the hairpin, that gives you a really good indicator of just how challenging the weather conditions and the spray is going to be. You can see there to the very left of your picture, there is Jens Marquardt and Stefan Reinhold, of course, from the RMG team. Jens Marquardt, the BMW Motorsport Director. Of course, we heard from Dieter Gas from Audi, and also from Dr. Florian Kemmelgeer from Aston Martin R Motorsport. On board with Marco Wittmann, who was making changes to his brake bias. Now, it's not impossible during the course of the race that drivers will actually make changes to their brake bias on every lap, just to get the maximum out of the car. So still with the 3 formation laps then, and the car's slowing down now because we're reaching the conclusion of the 3rd formation lap, and the cars will grid up in these really challenging conditions to go racing for the new race duration, 34 laps. So, confirmation once again of the quick new facts for DTM 2019. 986 kilos without the driver is the new weight. Best power to weight ratio in DTM history ever. Push to pass, the engine power can be increased by 30 horsepower up to 12 times per race. The DRS and push to pass can be used within that 3-second range to the car in front, with the exception of the final 5 laps, where DRS and push to pass can be used regardless of the gap. That, of course, is except for the race leader. And the start procedure now much more reliant on the driver rather than the preload that we used to be able to do in terms of the start procedure, where they used to use this launch control to get the cars off the grid.
You will take that.
So a bit of Pietro Fittipaldi's team radio as we were on board with Rennie Rast. We were on board then with Timo Glock.
So it's...
And the pole sitter lines up. Marco Wittmann alongside him then is Mike Rockenfeller in the number 99 car. It's going to take me a while to get my eye into that new livery of Mike Rockenfeller, and also Marco Wittmann come to that. And perhaps the most boldest is Timo Glock, where gone is the all-yellow machine that used to be famed for Timo Glock. Ferdinand von Habsburg we're on board with here now for our motorsport. See him just feathering the throttle there. We get the green flag from the marshal at the rear. Stand by, because DTM for 2019. When the 5 lights go out, let's go racing. Marco Wittmann just bogs down a little bit. Robin Freins gets a brilliant start. He's up alongside Paul di Resta and past him already into P2. So a great start from Robin Freins. Around goes one of the BMWs. Luckily, still pointing in the right direction. I'm pretty sure that might be Timo Glock. So perhaps it wasn't then, as we were just on board with Timo Glock. But Marco Wittmann, Robin Freins, P1 and P2 as the cars come through turn 2, then turn 3. And head up towards the Parabolica now, where Marco Wittmann tries to stretch his legs and increase that margin between himself and Robin Freins. They're 3 abreast, fighting over P4, 5 and 6 here, with Jamie Green in that mix very much. Diving to the inside there, this great heli shot then. Marco Wittmann sprints away as all heck breaks out behind on the hairpin. Jamie Green being tracked there, as you can see. Jamie Green, one of the few that retains similar colours to last year. So Wittmann then doing nothing wrong at the start of the race, but just found that the car bogged down with wheel spin. That also affected Mike Rockenfeller and allowed Robin Freins to come through the middle of the pack and put himself into that P2 position right at the start of the race. There's Nico Muller being chased down by the number 23 car. Here's Mike Rockenfeller now on the inside of Paul di Resta. Paul di Resta tries to come back. Timo Glock under investigation for that incident at turn number 1. Rennie Rast trying to buy into this, of course, as well. And Joel Eriksson, he's gone from... he's up to P5. So a good start from Joel Eriksson as well. Another one of those drivers that the conditions right at the start of the race seemed to work for him. And while all heck was breaking out around, he kept his cool. But Marco Wittmann has done just that and finds himself with a 1.5 second margin over Robin Freins ahead of Mike Rockenfeller. Then it's Paul di Resta, Rennie Rast and Sheldon van der Linde as push to pass is now enabled. Jamie Green is running in P7, and Philip Eng, his luck goes from bad to even worse as the number 25 car comes in, and so too does Daniel Juncadella in the Aston Martin car. There's Danny Juncadella. So they're changing the tyres on Danny Juncadella's car already, and going for this potential. I suppose when you were where you were from Danny Juncadella's point of view, it's worth taking the gamble, and actually the gamble the same for Philip Eng, who actually doesn't have a problem but has just come in for his mandatory stop. We're so fearful that he was going to have issues. And that car going around indeed was Timo Glock, so I did get that absolutely right, but he managed to get it going in the right direction again. Let's see if we can see this from on board with Rennie Rast then. Well, that's the reason why. To be fair, I think Timo turned in on him, and he's down in P12 now, so I don't think Rennie Rast had really very far to go there, because Timo Glock did cut across the front of Rennie Rast, and in fairness, he's under investigation for that. So Marco Wittmann, back as we were then, 1.5 seconds ahead of Robin Freins, who dives out of